Hello, BookTube. I thought I'd do a 2019 best books, books I read over the year. Um, I went through I keep them in a little commonplace book, and I have for probably 30, 40 years, so I've got piles of these things. And I went through the list. I've been seeing these videos around, so I thought it'd be a good idea to do one. I enjoy watching them. I went through the list, and was a little surprised, some of the stuff. Not by the books, but by the distribution, the types of genres and that sort of thing. I started my channel 2.5 years ago in the hopes that I would read more fiction. First couple years that seemed to work, but this last year I fell into my bad old ways. So I thought I'd go through what I picked out of the list. It was a little hard. I have things that I enjoyed reading that didn't quite make the list. A classic example, this, just finished a week or two ago. Enjoyed it very much, but it's not really something that lends itself to a best of the year. Some in the series of those novels, Star Trek novels, have for me, but very, very few. But that doesn't mean I don't enjoy them. But for what did, I'm going to try to jump back and forth a little bit. I've got, let's see here, 2, 4, 6 nonfiction, and then four fiction. So again, not quite so well on the fiction this year, but the nonfiction quite a bit. And then I did have some fiction that I really enjoyed. So start out, I'm in the middle of this 5-book series, and this is Jefferson and the Rights of Man. I'm slowly working my way through these. This is an old biography set. Used to be very common. You would get a set of these for joining the Book of the Month Club, so you see them everywhere, and it was a big deal. I'm almost done with the third one now, so I'll finish that one in 2020, obviously, and then have a couple more to go. These are old history, so they tend to be very well written. We wouldn't look at everything the same way now, and we probably wouldn't choose to characterize some of the things in here the same. But that doesn't make it any less valuable. The fact that it's causing you to ask questions about some of the choices is just fine in my book. It's a way of learning and moving on. So I'm very much enjoying this. I probably read this 30 years ago, I guess. So it's a good reread. And so that would be one of the earlier ones. And then on fiction, it was an author I see around constantly. I had never read before. I've seen him in the background shelves on people's videos. And I read this and ended up really, really enjoying it. And this is David Gemmell, Sword in the Stone, Book 1 of the Regante. I have the second volume upstairs, and I will read it. I don't know how big the series is, but I think there's quite a few books in it. So fierce and proud, the Regante dwell deep in the green mountain lands, worshipping the gods of the air and water and the spirits of the earth. Among them lives a warrior who bears the mark of fate. Born of the storm that slew his father, he is Conovar. And tales of his courage spread like wildfire. And he is quite a character, and so are the supporting cast of characters. And some great world building. So this is heroic fantasy, and really, really like it. Really like it. Then, switching back to nonfiction, this is Paul Revere's Ride, David Hackett Fischer, who is a very well-known historian. And this was just an eye-opening read. Its detail, I mean, there's little notes that go with it, but its detail about the ride, the Paul Revere's world he lived in, the communities, small communities all around that part of New England, how they mustered, how they dealt with the British, what they thought about the British, and then how organized they were, and how effective. They mobilized the countryside, and the story of how they did it is just fascinating. So it's a book for those of you who like to read this type of thing, this is tough to beat. Then switching back to fiction, I watch a channel, and he's been on for 6 years. Isn't that amazing? Final Blow Joe, excellent booktube channel. And a lot of times I love to watch it when he does the world cons. He travels and goes to all the science fiction world cons, so that's been an adventure to watch. But he has, I watched him talk about Ian M. Banks' Consider Phoebus. Found a copy after hearing it and gave it a read. And this is another, these volumes are something I will continue with. These are called culture novels. And excellent world building, very complex, brilliant. So I'll just give you a little synopsis here from the back. The war raged across the galaxy. Billions had died. Billions more were doomed. Moons, planets, the very stars themselves faced destruction. Cold-blooded, brutal, and worse, random. The Idirans fought for their faith, the culture for its moral right to exist. Principles were at stake. There could be no surrender. Really good stuff. So, if you like that kind of sci-fi on a galactic scale, great. Then in the arts, The Art of Florence, A City and Its Legacy by Scott Nethersole. Beautifully produced book, Lawrence King Publishing. Yeah, this came out in 2019, and I learned a lot, and the fact that it was so beautifully produced didn't hurt. They have a lot of figures like this, and then it'll be tied into the story of the art. So yeah, learned a lot there, and very much enjoyed it. It's really just a greatly, beautifully produced book. So then back to fiction. This is The Riddle of the Sand by Erskine Childers. It's a very famous book. These end papers are very important. Actually, the charts and maps throughout this are very important. This is a story of a sailboat journey in one way, early 20th century spy novel. It evokes a whole period that this is one of those books you always hear about, especially if you're in any connection with seafaring. This is just a novel that just won't go away type of thing. I really liked it. I do think it would be helpful if you get a copy that you look to make sure it does have charts and maps in it, because it's actually sort of fun to follow along. It's almost like you're watching a video game in a way, except for the language and the writing and the story is just wonderful. So going back to nonfiction, this was sent to me by Steve Donahue from the channel of the same name. It's called Jerusalem, City of the Book. It's by Marav Mack and Benjamin Boleyn, with photographs, and in this case it matters because the photography is really nice. It's Frederick Brenner, and this is Jerusalem, City of the Book. I did a review on Open Letters Review of this volume. It's Yale University Press, and I'm a big fan of Yale University Press. Obviously 2019. Here are our authors. And it's all the different kinds. I've actually worked, I opened right up to it. I have worked with 2 different sets of these books, and they're massive. They're polyglots. In other words, they're multiple languages. Just gigantic books. They're just wonderful. But so I had some connection with some of this, and I really learned a lot about these small libraries in Jerusalem. Some were kept by religious orders, some are private, some are public. Who owns and who controls them matters in that part of the world. The conditions they exist under and their age are various or varied. So it's a book I really, really enjoyed. So for those of you who like books about books or books about libraries, and there's been some good ones this year, this would have to be there. So next, I actually miscounted. So there's only 3 fiction. And the rest are all nonfiction. This is a reread, and a book that made a big impact on me when I was younger, but actually even more so the second time reading it this year. And this is Wanderer by Sterling Hayden, the famous actor. The thing about him is he's also a really good novelist. He wrote, and I'd like to find a copy, I think it's Voyage, a novel of, I'm going to say 1898, but I probably have the year wrong. Well, maybe they have it in here. They just say The Voyage. This this volume is interesting because it shows a time, the Great Depression, and it shows him as a nautical person. He caught the eye of a Hollywood talent scout and became a very well-known actor. Was not always thrilled with that. Ran away with his children to sea, defying a judge. The stories of him growing up and how he created a life for himself in the Great Depression with a very, very bad family situation that the economy made worse. It's fascinating, harrowing reading. And some of you out there read this book with me, and I still occasionally get comments because it had a big impact on people. I thought I just saw some photographs, but I'm not, well, yeah. Let's see here. There's one of the boat he took off on. This is mostly based around the story of him. I mean, he gives structure to it with the story of his escape from California with his children. But here's some scenes of him in different movies. So, excellent, excellent book. One I will always keep. Then these last 2 are related. The first here is Boswell's London Journal, and this is edited by Frederick A. Pottle, who did a lot of these. This is McGraw-Hill. This is sort of a journal that was hidden away for a long time. The story of the manuscript itself is fascinating. He talks about things in here that one would think you would never put even in a private journal. And it's pretty racy in some spots. Paints an incredible picture of the time. So this is 1762 to 1763. There's a whole series of these. I'm going to start looking for the rest. I think there's a, oh, what is there? I don't even know if they list them back here. No, it does not look like they do. I think there's one in Holland. There's various others. I will try to find them as I can because I would love to read as many of these as I could. Fascinating, excessive self-honesties that sometimes can throw you, but a literary gem. And then that led me to follow up on some of that kind of reading and that diaries and things. So I've been dipping out again. And as a maritime background, you always run into Samuel Pepys, especially if you read British maritime history. But he's most famous in literary history as a journal keeper. It's sort of like Boswell did here, but on an even greater scale or quality or whatever you want to call it. So I did earlier read Claire Tomalin's autobiography, memoir type. I won't be listed here, and I can't off the top of my head remember what it was called. Oh, actually, I've got it right here, right? That's what the point of these books is, right? So you have a list of what you've read. So let's see, Claire, A Life of My Own. So I'd read that. I knew about her Dickens, and then I started reading stuff in there about her Samuel Pepys biography, and I got it. Samuel Pepys, An Unequaled Self, a biography by Claire Tomalin, and this was fantastic. Which is a challenge because you're writing a biography of a guy who wrote maybe the most famous diary in our language, the English language, and yet you're trying to incorporate that. But she tells a broader life, and she puts him into a context that's just fascinating, and I couldn't recommend it enough. So that is my favorite books, 10 of them from the year. I could have added more, but pretty happy with this list. I will try this year to do a little better on the fiction. Last year also, and none of them were put on this list, but of course we did Sag Along, where we read some of the Icelandic sagas. So there was a lot that happened in the year. And of course, we lost our friend and BookTube commenter, Leonard Murray. My heart goes out to his family. And Jason Harrigan did a wonderful little piece on Leonard on his channel, Byways in Bookland. But I did feel that, and I left a comment there. So an eventful year for BookTube. So thank you all, and we'll get reading.